Hi everyone, my name is Cantor Rosalie Will and welcome to Storytime at JKids Radio. Today I'm going to be telling you the story of the light in the darkness. There was a family and the parents had to decide which of their children should not only run the family farm when they decided to retire and stop working so hard on the farm, but also who would best continue the work that they had done in the world for social justice and for caring for everyone in the community. And they had 3 children, and they weren't sure which child should really carry on this great legacy. So the parents invited the 3 children to them and gave them a very specific task. They took them to a barn on their property, on their farm, and said, "We are going to give you some money, and your task is to figure out a way, with this money and no more, to fill this barn, every corner of this barn, as full as possible. Because then we will know that you really value not only the money, but of filling up all of the space that you can and of doing your best in the world." So the 3 children went off. They took the little bags of money to figure out what to do to fill this barn so that they could continue the work of the farm after their parents and also show that they could bring the most to the world. Well, the time arrived and the 2 fathers gathered their 3 children with them in front of the barn and asked the eldest son to go first. And the eldest son came up with a large truck full of farm equipment, motors and builders and all of the things they need to pull the horses and to plow, and one by one filled it, squished it into every corner of the barn. So much equipment all tangled up, filling it all the way to the doors. And the fathers and the rest of the children stood there watching, and it was pretty impressive how much equipment that this eldest son had shoved into the barn. And they said, "Very good." Everything came out. The next day, the fathers invited the children again and asked the second son what had he brought to fill this barn. And that son came forward with a huge truck full of bales of hay, big square bales of hay, and one by one he put each bale of hay into the barn right up against each other very mathematically, all the way till it filled up the door of the barn and no one could move. And they could barely see just a few cracks around the bales of hay, and it was pretty full. The fathers were impressed and said, "That's really good, all of the straw fitting into the barn this way." The next day, they invited their youngest daughter to come forward. But she came forward with nothing, no truck, nothing in her hands, and even had the bag of coins still full of money, and handed it to her parents and said, "Let's just go into the barn," and invited her dads and her brothers into the barn and closed the doors. And she said, "I think I have found the best way to really fill every corner of the barn." She reached into her pocket, took out a little box, and struck a match, and held up the match in the very dark barn. And indeed, the light went to every corner of the barn. Her parents, her dads went all around in every corner, and there was indeed light. And her brothers went up into the loft of the barn and over to the corners, and indeed there was light. There was no space where there wasn't darkness. And indeed, this daughter was given the gift of continuing the family legacy of running the farm and showing that even the simplest thing could bring the most to the world. One light, one match can fill every corner of the darkest places. All of the light within us can bring light into the dark, just one match. We don't need a lot of money. We don't need a lot of things. We just need light and love, and the light and love that is within us to fill the darkest spaces.